Neymiş efendim? Türklüğümüzü yaşayamayacakmışız. Neymiş? Türklüğümüzle gurur duymayacakmışız. Ulan soysuzlar! Ulan...
Good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about the Empire of Trebizond as was voted for in the poll that I last had. My next episode will be the second highest winner, the Hussite Wars. But today we're going to jump right into it. So, the Empire of Trebizond, what was it and how did it come about? What was its role in history? So, it started as a successor state of the Byzantine Empire after the Crusade in 1204, the Fourth Crusade. Now, during 1203, the emperor, I believe it was Isaac the Second Angelos, was deposed. The Venetians came in support of the deposed emperor and his son, Alexius the Fourth Angelos. Now, they were only there because they needed to get to Anatolia, which is Turkey, in order to take the land route to start their crusade against the Turks. As was done within all previous crusades, the Western leaders and hosts going east would all pass through Byzantine territory, through Constantinople, and then being ferried into Anatolia because they would have provisions and safety within this route. However, while there, obviously, this recent deposal of an emperor and some aggression towards the Latin quarter that was inside the city caused the Latins, specifically these Venetians, to support, the turmoil that was going on in form of taking out the city and exerting their political control over it. Obviously, I do not believe that the former emperor would have supported this if he knew that the Latins were just going to destroy the city and make it their own instead of reinstalling him or installing his son as the emperor. But unfortunately, what happened is, contrary to that, he accepted their help. They got into the city, and boom, Byzantine Empire was destroyed, fractured into a bunch of successor states. Namely, what we're going to focus on being the Empire of Trebizond. So if we take a look at the map right here, we can see all the states within Anatolia and the Greek region. We see the Latin Empire, the Nicene Empire, Thessaloniki, Hellas, Achaia, Epirus, and then Trebizond up in the right next to Georgia. All of these are successors to the Byzantine Empire after the Crusade occurred and the sack happened of Constantinople in late 1203, 1204. As we know from one of my earlier videos, or if you just know about history, this would cause the indefinite end of the Romans in the centuries to come. However, the Trebizond Empire would outlast any of the other states by a good couple decades. So let's take a look at that map. So right now we see a map of Anatolia and the Middle East. This is in 1453. We see that Constantinople is in control of the Ottoman Empire, and we see an independent Empire of Trebizond. So the Empire of Trebizond did not fall to the Ottomans until 1461, approximately 12 years after the Byzantine Empire in its proper form was eliminated by the Ottomans. So a decent time afterwards, but not really too long to call it more successful because it is really just a city and its surroundings. No more an empire than was the Byzantines in their last days. In order for us to talk about the Empire of Trebizond, however, we must first discuss the Komnenos dynasty, which had been the rulers of the Byzantine Empire until they were deposed by the Angelos, who were the ones who unfortunately caused the Fourth Crusade to happen. As well as we'll have to discuss Georgia, and specifically Queen Tamar of Georgia. Who is this lady, Queen Tamar of Georgia? Well, firstly, she's considered a saint in the Orthodox Church. Um, some coin her the Saint King of Georgia because of her rule being so flourishing for the state of Georgia. Um, Others would call her a very pious and devout woman because of her um, great sense of duty towards Christianity within her realm and the defense of Christians from the Muslims invading into Georgia or attempting to invade into Georgia. So, how did she become queen? Well, first off, her father, George III, um, he had no sons, and his only possible heir at the time, uh, his nephew, he had just recently blinded, so that was not a possible candidate for becoming the king anymore. So what he did was, in I believe it was 1188, he elevated his daughter Tamar to become co-ruler with him, so that in the event of his death, she would just take over as queen of Georgia. Um, so that's exactly what happened. When he died, she became the queen, the sole ruler in Georgia, and there was no king. Uh, Obviously, this doesn't seem like a very good position. It was very precarious, uh, and the clergy and the nobles tried to seize power, or at least limit her abilities as the ruler. Uh, they forced her to make some concessions within the military, within the governance of the state, and then as well they made her marry so that they would accept, her rule essentially. And she got married to one of the exiled princes or dukes rather of Kievan Rus. I believe his name was Michael, and so he became the king, but he also became a general. As you see, the conquest of the armies of Islam were being pressed further and further during this time. Saladin, um, or Salah ad-Din, as some people will call him, uh, had just been fighting Richard Lionheart, Richard III Plantagenet of England, and he just retook Jerusalem for the armies of Islam. And so the Ayyubid Caliphate was, or sorry, the Ayyubid kingdom was in control of the Holy Land, and this was a great morale boost for the Muslims all throughout the Middle East. Um, at this time, the Muslims were also trying to conquer Georgia because it being a Christian kingdom and uh, not agreeing to accept Islam, they just couldn't stand that. So Muslim armies invaded Georgia. Um, the new king, the new king, George's or Tamar's husband, led the armies. They won battles and successfully held off the scourge into the Christian kingdom for some time. But then the king became debaucherous. Go figure. And so Tamar asks the church to have an annulment with her marriage with him, and they accept. And so she divorces him. This is the only acceptable case for divorce within the church is adultery. So, you know, um, she is now the sole ruler of Georgia, and she makes use of this because honestly, no one seemed to be in the position to want to help what she wanted to do. So she puts her own people within power in the nobility and the government of Georgia, and then apart from being the head of the army, essentially, like leading them up to battle with the armies and whatnot, um, she starts doing a bit of statecraft and intrigue outside of her own kingdom. Because you see, at the same time that this is going on, you just had the Fourth Crusade occur, and the Byzantine lands are now in a political upheaval. The Komnenos dynasty has fled. Um, Specifically, two of its scions, Alexios and David. These are her nephews, as her sister had been married to one of the previous emperors, Manuel Komnenos II. And so they flee over to Georgia and take refuge within her kingdom. So right here we can see the kingdom of Georgia within the orange or dark peach color, I guess. And this is in approximately the time of 1184 to 1230 that this map looked like this for that kingdom. The other shades, Trebizond being kind of a vassalage state, but not really because it's more of an ally to Georgia, as well as the other lands highlighted in a yellowish color are lands in which the Kingdom of Georgia is able to extract tribute from. Well, the two of her nephews, Alexios and David, um, they both go on to lead a couple of armies, two very small armies, as they're essentially just Georgian armies rented out to them in order to secure or recapture lands that used to be one, Komnenos land, but two, Byzantine land that belonged to their grandfather when he had been the emperor. And so they lead an expedition into Trebizond, and they expect that they're going to have to fight a battle to take the city, but because it had been lands of their family, it just hands over to them. And so these two are back within the city, and Alexios becomes Alexios the First, Megas Komnenos, the first ruler of the Empire of Trebizond. Now that that's happened, they press the advantage. They go on a few more expeditions into the Turkish lands to try and retake land while they are still in a strong position to do so. And they manage to take a little bit um, more than they originally thought they could have, uh, establishing, the borders that you saw in the map we just looked at. Um, They didn't manage to hold those borders forever, that being the Empire of Trebizond, as the Seljuk collapse and an eventual rise of the Ottomans really cowed their borders a little bit. But they maintained from essentially like 1204 until uh, 1461 the Empire of Trebizond as a um, Greek, not necessarily colony, but exclave within Anatolia, um, continuing the Komnenos rule of the Byzantine Empire longer than even all their successors.